In the winter of 1943, deep inside occupied Europe, German intelligence began hearing whispers about a mysterious woman who seemed to appear and disappear without a trace. She had no rank, no uniform, no official record, and yet Allied supply routes were suddenly changing overnight. German convoys were being ambushed at exactly the wrong turns. Safe houses were being evacuated minutes before Gestapo raids. Someone was leaking everything. At first, they assumed it was a network, then a commander, then perhaps a group of infiltrators inside their own command. But the truth was far more disturbing. Every time they tracked the source of the leak, it led back to the same person, a quiet young woman who moved through checkpoints on a simple bicycle. She carried no weapon, no escort, no protection, only a satchel filled with coded messages. They gave her a name in their reports, Die Weiße Maus, the White Mouse, because no matter how many traps they set, she always slipped through. By March 1944, the Gestapo formed a special task unit, 30 trained agents. Their only mission: find her, stop her, make an example of her. What they didn't know was that they weren't hunting the White Mouse. The White Mouse was already watching them. The first mistake the Gestapo made was thinking this would be quick. Within 48 hours of forming the special unit, their agents began sweeping through the districts where resistance activity had been reported. Apartments were searched, safe houses were raided, entire streets were locked down overnight. Checkpoints doubled across the city. Every woman on a bicycle was stopped. Every courier was questioned. But the White Mouse never appeared. Instead, something else happened. On the third night of the operation, one of the agents assigned to the task failed to report back. At first, they assumed it was a delay, then a communication failure. But by morning, his office was empty, no signs of struggle, no forced entry. Just his coat missing from the rack, and the wall map, slightly moved. 2 nights later, another agent disappeared, then another. No bodies, no witnesses, no gunshots, no alarms raised. It was as if they had simply walked out into the night and never returned. That's when the unit commander ordered something drastic. All 30 agents would now move in pairs. No one would work alone again. But even that didn't stop what came next. By the second week of the operation, panic had begun to quietly spread inside the Special Task Unit. Not the loud kind, not the kind that caused shouting or chaos, but the silent kind. The kind that made trained officers double-check locked doors before going to sleep. The kind that made them stop walking alone, even during the day. Because now, it wasn't just rumors. 6 agents were gone. No resignations, no transfers, no confirmed casualties. They had simply vanished in districts where the White Mouse had last been reported. So the commander made a decision. If they couldn't find her, they would make her come to them. A false intelligence leak was planted through a captured courier network. A shipment of Allied radio equipment would be moving through the old Eastern Quarter at exactly 23:40 hours. Unprotected, lightly escorted. Exactly the kind of target resistance command couldn't afford to ignore. But the shipment wasn't real. The crates were empty. The street was already surrounded. Inside the nearby apartment buildings, 12 agents waited in silence. Weapons ready, staircases covered, back exits locked. Every window watched. For the first time since this hunt began, they believed they had her cornered at 23:38. One of the lookouts reported movement, a woman on a bicycle approaching from the southern end of the street. No escort, no deviation in speed, no hesitation, just a satchel hanging from her shoulder. At 23:39, she passed directly beneath the first observation point at 23:40. She reached the center of the trap, and then the streetlights went out. For 3 full seconds, no one moved. The street, once lit by 4 overhead lamps, had fallen into complete darkness. Inside the observation apartment, one of the agents cursed under his breath and reached for his flashlight. Another moved toward the stairwell window. Below them, they could still hear the soft metallic click of a bicycle chain. Then nothing. "Now!" the commander shouted. Doors burst open across the building. Agents rushed down staircases. Boots pounded against concrete steps as pairs fanned out into the street below. Flashlights cut through the fog. Rifles raised. Eyes scanning every doorway, every alley, every moving shadow. But the woman who had entered the trap was gone. Her bicycle remained, lying quietly near the center of the road. The satchel still hanging from the handlebars, unopened, untouched. One of the agents approached it carefully. He knelt down, checked for wires, for weight, for anything unusual. Then he opened it. Inside was nothing but neatly folded newspaper, no codes, no documents, no equipment, just blank space where something should have been. And that's when the first shot rang out, not from the street, but from above. A lookout, positioned 2 buildings down, collapsed backward out of sight. Then another shot, this time from behind the apartment block. Radio chatter exploded across the unit's channel. Someone yelled that the rear exit had been breached. Another reported movement on the rooftops. They had sealed the entire district, locked every staircase, covered every alley. But somehow, someone else was already inside the perimeter. Within seconds of this first shot, the entire operation began to fall apart. Radio channels filled with overlapping voices. Units were reporting movement from rooftops, from basements, from stairwells that had already been cleared twice. One pair, stationed at the northern alley, reported hearing footsteps directly above them, on a building that had been declared empty. Another team near the rear perimeter suddenly lost contact with Central Command. Their radio cut out mid-sentence. Then came the worst report of all. The main street checkpoint, the one meant to seal the eastern exit, had been abandoned. Not overrun, not attacked, just empty. Rifles left leaning against the sandbags. Flashlights still lying on the pavement, as if the agents stationed there had stepped away for a moment and never returned. Inside the command apartment, the unit leader demanded a head count. Pairs began responding one by one. 12 confirmed. 10, 8. Then silence. 2 agents who had been stationed inside the very building itself were now missing. No broken doors, no shattered windows, no signs of forced entry. Their positions had been within 20 meters of each other, both armed, both experienced, both gone. And then someone noticed something else. The building's internal phone line had been cut, not from the outside, but from within the stairwell, which meant whoever was moving through the perimeter wasn't trying to escape. They were isolating it. By the time they understood the pattern, it was already too late. The command building had 3 floors, 6 monitored entrances, and a secured internal stairwell that had been guarded since the beginning of the operation. Every officer inside believed it was the safest position in the entire district. No one entered without clearance. No one moved between floors without being logged. No one passed the central hallway without challenge. But sometime after the blackout, that certainty began to collapse. First, one of the interior guards reported hearing movement on the 2nd floor. Footsteps. Light. Careful. Not running, not rushing, just slow, controlled steps across wooden flooring. He assumed it was one of their own, someone repositioning after the chaos outside. Until he checked the corridor log, no one had signed in. He called out. No response. Then the hallway light flickered once and went out completely. Moments later, a second guard stationed at the far end of the administrative wing stopped answering his radio. His last transmission had been a single sentence. "I think someone's already..." Static. Gone. The commander ordered every remaining agent to fall back toward the central staircase. Pairs moved quickly through the darkened halls, flashlights sweeping across portraits, filing cabinets, empty desks. One team reached the internal archive room. The door was already open. Inside, a window that had been sealed hours earlier now stood ajar, curtains moving slowly in the night air, and on the floor beneath it, a bicycle courier badge. Not theirs. At 1:32 hours, the final piece fell into place. It wasn't the stairwell, it wasn't the archive room, and it definitely wasn't the street outside. It was the office at the end of the administrative corridor, the one assigned to Major Kruger, the intelligence officer overseeing resistance suppression across the eastern sector. When the command team reached his door, it was unlocked, not broken, not forced, just open. Inside, nothing appeared disturbed at first glance. The desk was intact, the filing cabinet still sealed, the lamp still on, but the safe behind the bookshelf had been opened. Not blown, not pried, unlocked. Its contents were gone. Every field report, every informant list, every undercover asset operating within resistance networks across 3 occupied districts. Months of work. Erased in silence. Kruger himself stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the empty shelves. He hadn't been reassigned, hadn't left the building, hadn't even moved from his post during the blackout, which meant whoever had entered his office had walked past every remaining guard in the building to get there. Then one of the agents noticed something on the desk, a small envelope, unsealed, with no markings on the outside. Inside was a single strip of paper, typed, precise. It read, "You should have checked the satchel." For a moment, no one in the room spoke. The message sat there on the desk, quiet, precise, impossible to misunderstand. "You should have checked the satchel." And suddenly, every agent in that building remembered the bicycle, still lying in the center of the street, still exactly where it had been left when the blackout began. The commander didn't hesitate. He ordered a team back to the ambush site immediately. 4 agents, 2 from the internal guard, 2 from the remaining perimeter. They moved fast through the now silent corridors, down the stairwell, out into the fog-covered street where the entire operation had started. The bicycle was still there, untouched, the satchel hanging from its handlebars exactly as before. One of the agents approached it again, the same one who had opened it earlier and found nothing but folded newspaper. Only this time, the satchel was heavier, not by much, but enough. He reached inside. The paper was still there, folded neatly, stacked carefully, except now, between the layers, was something else, a small cylindrical object wrapped in cloth, with a timer already running. The moment the cloth came undone, everything changed. The agent holding the satchel didn't shout, didn't panic, didn't even move at first, because what he saw wasn't complicated. It wasn't hidden behind wires or layered with traps. It was simple, deliberate, a compact cylindrical charge, professionally assembled, and mounted directly beside it, a mechanical timer, already ticking, not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft, steady sound that almost blended into the distant wind moving through the empty street. For a split second, no one reacted, because in that moment, they realized what the satchel had never been meant to do. It wasn't for documents, it wasn't for codes, it wasn't even meant to be recovered by resistance fighters. It was meant to be inspected, opened, handled, carried back inside the perimeter, carried past every secured entrance, past every checkpoint, up the internal stairwell, into the very building they believed was sealed from the outside world. And suddenly, the commander's earlier order made horrifying sense. Fall back to the central staircase, regroup in the administrative corridor, secure the command level. They had done exactly that. Every surviving agent, every remaining officer, now gathered inside a single structure, with no idea that they had already transported the operation's final stage directly toward themselves. The agent holding the device finally spoke. Quietly. "Timer's running." Another reached for his radio. No signal. The blackout that had covered the district had never been lifted. Communication lines were still down. Landlines had been cut from within, and the only runners left were already inside the building. Then someone asked the question no one wanted to answer. "How long?" The agent turned the satchel slightly, enough for the beam of his flashlight to fall across the timer's face. The numbers were already below 2 minutes, and still counting down. They didn't run at first, because running meant admitting what had just happened. Running meant accepting that the entire operation, the trap, the blackout, the missing agents, the sealed perimeter, had never been designed to catch the white mouse at all. It had been designed to move them, to compress them, to force every remaining officer, every surviving operative into a single structure under the illusion of security. And now, They had less than 2 minutes to undo it. The satchel was passed carefully between them as they moved back toward the command building. Boots striking wet stone. Flashlight beams shaking across walls that now felt far too narrow, too enclosed, too final. The central entrance had already been locked from the inside after the first disappearances. Protocol? Containment. No unauthorized exits until command cleared the operation. So they took the internal stairwell, the same one that had been guarded all night, the same one that had shown no signs of intrusion, until now, because halfway up the first landing, they found the guard, still seated against the wall, rifle across his lap, flashlight lying beside his hand. No visible wounds, no signs of struggle, just unconscious, as if someone had stepped out of the dark behind him and decided he didn't need to wake up again. They moved past him. Second floor, administrative wing. Voices ahead, confusion, radios still dead. More agents gathering in the corridor near Major Kruger's office, exactly where they had been ordered to regroup earlier, exactly where the safe had been opened, exactly where the command team now realized the blast radius would be the most effective. Someone tried the internal phone again. Nothing. Another agent began shouting for evacuation clearance, but no one outside could hear them. And then, as they reached the final landing, the stairwell door above them slowly began to close. On its own. By the time they reached the top of the stairwell, the hallway was already filling, not with smoke, not yet, but with voices, orders overlapping with questions, agents trying to verify positions, trying to confirm who had made it back inside, trying to figure out why no one outside was responding. The satchel was passed forward again, carefully now, like something alive, because the timer hadn't stopped, and in the silence between shouted commands, they could hear it, tick, tick, tick. Major Kruger himself stepped forward from the administrative corridor as they emerged, his office door still open behind him, the empty safe still visible through the gap in the bookshelf. "What is that?" he demanded. No one answered, because everyone already knew. Instead, one of the agents moved past him toward the emergency exit at the end of the hall, a reinforced steel door installed after the previous resistance bombing months earlier, designed to allow rapid evacuation of command staff if the building came under attack. He grabbed the handle, turned it. Nothing. Tried again. Harder this time. Still nothing. "It's locked," he said. Someone else shouted for the override key. Another began searching the nearby desk for access codes, but the panel beside the door was already open, the wiring inside exposed, not ripped out, not burned, disconnected, cleanly, like someone had taken their time with it. The realization spread faster than any order could. The blackout hadn't just hidden movement through the perimeter, it had given someone enough time to move through the building itself, to isolate communications, disable internal lines, neutralize guards, open the safe, and now, seal the only exit that mattered. One of the younger agents finally looked down at the satchel again, then back up at the corridor filled with officers who had been hunting a single courier for the past 12 days. "How much time is left?" he asked. The man holding it didn't reply immediately. He tilted the satchel just enough for the light to fall across the timer. 37 seconds. 37 seconds. That was all they had left. And suddenly, all the structure of the operation, all the discipline, all the months of intelligence work, collapsed into something far more primitive. Survival. Orders began to overlap again. Someone shouted for the satchel to be thrown out the nearest window. Another demanded they move it back down the stairwell. A third tried to organize a controlled evacuation, even now, still believing procedure could save them. But no one could agree on where to go, because every route that had been secured earlier had been secured from the inside. The archive room window had been opened. Yes, but the administrative corridor had no exterior access. The stairwell they came from led directly back into the sealed entrance hall, and the rooftop access ladder was gone, not broken, removed. Two of the agents rushed toward the internal office windows anyway. Old glass, wooden frames. They smashed one open with the butt of a rifle. Cold night air flooded in, fog pouring through the gap like smoke from a breach. But the drop below was 3 full floors, onto a narrow alley choked with debris. No ladders, no balconies, no fire escape, and not enough time to lower the satchel safely. Someone else tried the emergency door again. Still sealed, still dead. No override, no external signal, no command authorization. The younger agent who had asked about the timer earlier took a step back. He wasn't looking at the satchel anymore. He was looking at the corridor, at the officers gathered beneath flickering emergency lights, at Major Kruger standing motionless beside the open office door, and, for the first time since the blackout began, he understood something none of them had allowed themselves to consider. She hadn't just entered the perimeter. She hadn't just taken the files. She had stayed long enough to make sure they would all be in the right place when the countdown reached 0. 5 seconds. No more shouting now, no more orders, no more plans, only the sharp mechanical rhythm of the timer echoing against the corridor walls. Tick, tick, tick. The agent holding the satchel made one final decision. He didn't try to throw it, didn't try to run. Instead, he slid it across the polished wooden floor toward the far end of the corridor, away from the cluster of officers toward the steel emergency door that refused to open. Maybe instinct, maybe hope, maybe denial. The satchel stopped halfway there. 3 seconds. One of the officers lunged toward the stairwell. Another dropped flat behind a desk. Major Kruger didn't move at all. His eyes were still fixed on the open safe inside his office, as if the missing documents mattered more than the seconds slipping away. 2 seconds. Somewhere outside, far beyond the sealed perimeter, a bicycle wheel turned slowly in the fog. 1 second. The emergency lights flickered, and then white. Not a roar at first, not chaos, just a violent, blinding flash that erased every shadow in the corridor at once. Then came the sound, a crushing wave that tore through wood, glass, steel, and bone. The administrative wing vanished in a blast of splintered beams and collapsing masonry. Windows shattered outward into the alley. The stairwell cracked along its center line. The reinforced emergency door folded inward like paper. From the street below, it looked as if the building had exhaled fire. Flame and debris bursting from its upper floors before the structure partially gave way, collapsing into itself with a deep, rolling thunder that echoed across the district. When the dust finally began to settle, there was no coordinated response, no surviving perimeter, no remaining command structure. The special task unit of 30 agents, gone. Their files, gone. Their informant network, compromised beyond recovery, and somewhere beyond the smoke-filled rooftops. A lone figure moved through the fog at the edge of the district, not running, not hiding, just riding. The white mouse had never intended to escape the trap. She had built it. 5 seconds. No more shouting now, no more orders, no more plans, only the sharp mechanical rhythm of the timer echoing against the corridor walls. Tick, tick, tick. The agent holding the satchel made one final decision. He didn't try to throw it, didn't try to run. Instead, he slid it across the polished wooden floor toward the far end of the corridor, away from the cluster of officers toward the steel emergency door that refused to open. Maybe instinct, maybe hope, maybe denial. The satchel stopped halfway there. 3 seconds. One of the officers lunged toward the stairwell. Another dropped flat behind a desk. Major Kruger didn't move at all. His eyes were still fixed on the open safe inside his office, as if the missing documents mattered more than the seconds slipping away. 2 seconds. Somewhere outside, far beyond the sealed perimeter, a bicycle wheel turned slowly in the fog. 1 second. The emergency lights flickered, and then white. Not a roar at first, not chaos, just a violent, blinding flash that erased every shadow in the corridor at once. Then came the sound, a crushing wave that tore through wood, glass, steel, and bone. The administrative wing vanished in a blast of splintered beams and collapsing masonry. Windows shattered outward into the alley. The stairwell cracked along its center line. The reinforced emergency door folded inward like paper. From the street below, it looked as if the building had exhaled fire. Flame and debris bursting from its upper floors before the structure partially gave way, collapsing into itself with a deep, rolling thunder that echoed across the district. When the dust finally began to settle, there was no coordinated response, no surviving perimeter, no remaining command structure. The special task unit of 30 agents, gone. Their files, gone. Their informant network, compromised beyond recovery, and somewhere beyond the smoke-filled rooftops. A lone figure moved through the fog at the edge of the district, not running, not hiding, just riding. The white mouse had never intended to escape the trap. She had built it. 5 seconds. No more shouting now, no more orders, no more plans, only the sharp mechanical rhythm of the timer echoing against the corridor walls. Tick, tick, tick. The agent holding the satchel made one final decision. He didn't try to throw it, didn't try to run. Instead, he slid it across the polished wooden floor toward the far end of the corridor, away from the cluster of officers, toward the steel emergency door that refused to open. Maybe instinct, maybe hope, maybe denial. The satchel stopped halfway there. 3 seconds. One of the officers lunged toward the stairwell. Another dropped flat behind a desk.